Hello. A very good evening to all of you. Please welcome to CA Mustakin Shaikh sir. He is a fellow member of the Institute of ICAI, and he is a FCA with the post qualification experience of more than 5 years. He is a commerce graduate and also LLB from MS University, Vadodara. He has served as a co-opted member of Internal Audit Committee of WIRC ICAI for the year 22-23. During his tenure as committee member, he played a leading role in developing the risk control metrics and other responsibilities for the benefits of the member at the large. He ventured into the area of internal audit and risk management from the very early post-qualification days. He has been a valid learner and student of this field ever since, has been an avid learner and student of this field ever since, and has a core on field experience in the domain in the phase of his professional career. Mustakin sir is also information technology enthusiastic and wishes to engage in developing contemporary solution to direct organizations toward the automation of the process. He also has a diverse experience during articleship experience and professional tenure, and have worked and handled assignments of all the fields related to profession. Apart from the professional interest, he is an avid reader and loves to travel. Please give applause to him. Thank you.
For the kind introductions. Am I audible to everyone? Great. So before we start this session, I would like to thank the Ahmedabad branch chairman, CA Niyarav Agrawal, and of course special thanks to Murtuza Kanchwala sir for recommending my name for this very interesting topic. Let's start the session. So before we start the session, I would like to request the audience that we would like to keep this session interactive. So I would request the coordinator to at least arrange a couple of mics which we can give to the audience to have their inputs as well during the sessions. Great. So let us first try to set the context what exactly we are going to discuss during this sessions. First we will try to set the context for the session which we have on the procure to pay cycle, and then we will discuss what is the P2P process overview and what are the key risks associated with the procure to pay cycle. Next we will be discussing what is the sampling, what are the sampling techniques, and what are the analytical things that we can do for the particular P2P cycle, and then we will see how to document, arrange the work papers during the course of audit, and then at last what are the reporting for the procure to pay cycle. Essentially these are the separate things, but I would like to combine all them when we will discuss each phase of the procure to pay cycles to make more sense about each of the processes. So just to give you idea why procure to pay cycle is an important thing for any organization, here are some mind brilliant facts or interesting numbers which definitely will keep your attention. One study says that over 50% of the corporate frauds which are happening around the corporates are originate from procure to pay. One more study says that 33% of the businesses are unaware of their losses, that's why they incurred the losses on account of frauds and all. That happens in the procure to pay cycle. These are the things we are going to cover in the subsequent slides. Yes. So to begin with, what is procure to pay cycle? So I would like to have some response from the audience. What do you really mean by procure to pay cycle? It's nothing but a process starting from the requisitioning, purchasing, receiving of goods or services, and then paying to the vendor, and then accounting for the same. Right? These are the key steps or stages involved in procure to pay cycle, right from the purchase requisitioning, and then selection of a vendor, then raising. Before we raise the purchase orders, of course, we select the vendors and vendor management comes into picture, then PO, then typically receiving the goods, then invoice verification and accounting. This is a typical procure to pay cycle, which of course I am sure the audience must be aware of. Right. So let us try to understand before we go on to audit. Okay, before we start, I just quickly want to know how many of are into practice and doing practice in internal audit. You can just raise your hands. Okay, because I got to know from the chairman that a lot of people are here came from the industry background. So how many of are here from the industry background? Oh, it's quite a good number. Great. So we will try to see things from both sides of the table to make things relevant and interesting. So being as an auditor, when we try to plan or define the scope of an internal audit, first thing we need to understand is what are the stages of the procure to pay cycle. Of course, we yeah. Any question? Anyone has any question? Okay, no problem. Yeah, so we saw that requisition is the first step, but not necessarily for all type of organization the requisitions might be in a place. Taking an example of a project team who might not be preparing a purchase requisition, but they might have, let's say, a BOQ in place. So when we define a scope, we need to be well aware of what processes are actually an organization is having. So we need to first understand the perspective of the client or the business that we are looking at, that what exactly are the processes in place with regard to procure to pay cycle. Next thing we need to understand it, what is the business process. Before we define any scope with regard to procure to pay, first we need to understand what exactly the business processes are. Giving you an example, I can give you a couple of examples here. Yeah, so in fact, this is the practical example that I came across while doing an audit of an automobile company. They provided a document called risk control matrix, wherein the said documents were mainly related to the indirect purchases that were happening. But to the surprise, I came to know that they do not have covered the main components which they procure for the automobile things. So this is something we need to know beforehand when we start audit, what are the things a particular scope should cover. So for that we need to have a clear understanding of the business process that a client is having. Another example can be, let's say we have sent a team for an audit. We have told that you need to do a rate comparison sort of thing, and then a team was very excited. They come across, sir, okay, we have found something. The product X from A is procured at 100 rupees. The same product is procured from Y at 150 rupees. But we don't need to jump to the conclusion that, okay, they have paid a 50 rupees extra. First, we need to understand what product is. Is the client in the trading business? So in the given case, let's say a client is into specialty chemicals. The raw material they procure is related to the derivative or something with regard to, it has something to do with the quality or content of the material. So the item that was procured at 100 rupees might have a less content or maybe of a low quality price, and the item which was procured at 150 might be having a superior quality or might have a more content in that particular product. So this is something we need to know beforehand. We cannot just take a data, do a rate difference for X product, we do from, let's say, a particular X product, कौन कौन से rate पे buy हुआ है. We cannot do that way. So first we need to have that understanding that okay, the client, in which product the client is dealing and how the pricing of that particular product is happening. Next is we need to involve the stakeholders. We need to take the inputs of the management of the client, that what precisely they want to cover during the course of audit, because something which we may feel is of importance might not be of that materiality to a client. So the client might have some other sort of risk in a certain process. So we need to, of course, take input of the client before we finalize the scope. And of course, nowadays we talk a lot about the risk-based audit. What is risk-based audit? Anyone? You can have, you can share mic. Yes, sir.
So basically, risk-based audit starts with understanding the risk in each sub-process of the major process. For example, in case of procurement, we identify what are the major risk indicators, like in procurement, like fraud, risk of fraud in procurement purchasing function, segregation of duties, risk in purchase order, creation, approval. So these are just some examples.
Great, great, very right. Anyone else? Okay. So risk-based audit is nothing but we classify our scope or define our scope basis the risk a particular process is carrying. And then we need to, of course, prioritize the risk, that what are the high risk item we need to give more coverage or more time to that particular process. What are the medium risk item, we will devote time accordingly, and for low risk item we may even exclude it from a process at certain frequency. Of course, we need to cover it maybe, let's say, once in a 2 year or maybe once in a 3 year, with as compared to what we would cover once in a year, those who are carrying the those items that carries the high risk. So now, once we have finalized the scope, when we start actually doing an audit, we will get the data from the client and we will, of course, be doing sampling. But in this technological world, the sampling word might have lost its relevance. When I attend the audit committee meetings and my report contains word like samples and all, so those independent directors does not really like the term used, and they always emphasize that why can't we do 100% transaction audit. I think before the in the panel, one of the panel member was discussing about the IDEA software, that how it helps to select the samples from the total data population. So the idea is, of course, in the technological era, we can do 100% audit of data, but when it comes to document verifications and all, we need to do a sampling. So I've just tried to compile all the frameworks which are currently in place with regard to samplings, but none of these framework gives an exact idea or the exact number that in particular process how many samples we need to select. It has, of course, given a broad outlier that while selecting the samples, you always need to ensure that the samples which you have selected covers the entire population. There is no bias. Okay, so I'll be sharing this PPT. In fact, I had a word with a branch chairman also. This PPT will be available to everyone. So if we are taking pictures for that sake, you can skip for it now. If you really want, there is no issue at all. But everyone will get this PPT. Don't worry. Yes, so coming back to the topic, these are the main framework with regard to internal audit. So SA 530 is basically with regard to accounting standard. It might not have a direct relevance to the internal audit, but of course, when we talk about the internal audit, we need to keep in mind what other standards also speaks. We will discuss each of the sampling method which are there in the next slide when we will specifically discuss each stage of the procure to pay, but these are the typical sampling methods. Of course, we would have learned this somewhere in 10th, 11th standard maybe, that what are the samplings method and all. So we might not have the direct relevance, or isolated, this may not seem that relevant, but when it comes to actual audit, it is a very important thing that we need to keep in mind. What type of samplings we are selecting for the audit. Yes, these are some key steps while selecting the samples. We first need to define the populations, and then we need to set the objective, for what objective we are extracting the samples, and then we need to determine the method. We cannot do a haphazard sampling. It's not allowed in ICAI at least. So when we do a sampling, we need to select a specific method. It may be a random, it may be a stratified, or it may be a monetary unit. But we need to document whatever audit sampling method we select, to safeguard our risk, of course. As a professional, when there is audit of an auditor, we need to have something which can really help us to safeguard ourselves. So it is very important for us to document what method we have used to select the samples. Then sample size. Again, the sample size will have a direct nexus to the risk a particular process carries. Higher the risk, higher would be the samples. Lower the risk, lower would be the samples. And then, of course, documentation. And there might be some exceptions to the samples which we have selected, so we need to document that as well. Data analytics. So apart from Excel, what tools we are using for the data analytics? Quick, yes sir. ACL, great. Okay. What about others? SAP generated reports. Okay, but that is a data. How do we analyze it? Sorry? Through Excel only. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, please. Sorry? Copilot, yeah. Power BI is not for the data analytics. It, I think, helps to give you a good dashboards and all. So that might not Office 365, of course, part of an Excel. Okay, anyone else? Sorry? NIME. Is it some AI tool?
No, it's not AI tool. It's a full data analysis open source.
Oh, great. Yeah, Data Sniper. Yes. What else? Great. See, even I want to have some learning from this session, so this is actually helping me to upgrade my knowledge as well. So thank you so much for all these inputs. Yeah, so I have just given few of the methods for the data analysis. These are not the typical tools, but what methods we can use to analyze the data. Few of them we might be doing in Excel. Benford law is something interesting which the fraud auditors generally use. Anyone has used Benford here? Idea gives, yes, correct. Okay. Have you used it before? Yes. So how does it work? No, so I'll just quickly explain how the Benford laws work. So Benford law is nothing but shows a probability a particular number can occur. So it has certain probability derived for the last digit. Let's say a particular digit occurs, let's say a digit 1. So as per Benford law, the probability of occurring the digit 1 is the highest, and likewise. So if you are getting any data, let's say a purchase register, and then you applied a Benford law to the purchase register, and the frequency of number 1 is not the highest. Let's say number 6 is occurring at the top, the highest percentage of data is related to last digit being 6. So then you need to deep dive into further those particular transactions, that what could have went wrong in that particular data. So this is how the Benford law works. AI we are discussing nowadays too much, so there are of course a lot of AI tools.
So
Yes.
you discussed about Benford law, so that means it shows our biasness.
Yes,
So
right.
if I have a biasness towards number 5,
Right.
so the particular of fraud occurring towards the number 5 will be higher.
Are the highest, yes. So we need to deep dive into the transactions with those particular data set.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. So working paper we will discuss later on. This is the most vulnerable area, us being auditor we have. So generally a mid-size firm like which I'm sure there must be very big numbers who are coming from the mid-size firm. So they are very, I would say, casual. Please don't take it otherwise, but this is the fact that we need to accept that we are not that good when it comes to documentation. So when a team member leaves and then we need to perform a perform an audit of the same client, of the same process, we have to start it from scratch. Why? Because we didn't efficiently document the audit procedure carried out earlier. So this is something where we as an auditor need to work more towards it. I have some example, if I can at least show it here, that how it can. See, this is just an example that how these are the actual data of a client. So if you find any name, please ignore it, because I don't want to reveal the client's detail at least. So what I personally do is, when I send a team for an audit, right, I first define the scope which is agreed with the management. Against that scope, what are the areas that I need to perform an audit of? What are the exact things that a team member is supposed to do? These are the things I keep constant. These are the data which from the column F. This is something a team member has to write, that what work procedure he has performed on particular data set or particular scope item. This is how I review and save my time, at least to ensure the completeness. Many a times it happens that we have sent a team for an audit, the team member will say, sir, humne kar diya, sab kar diya, but then we will ask how you have carried out the audit. He might not have the answer to that question. So this is why it is very important for us as an auditor to document right from the scope to how the work procedure have been performed, what are the observation, and it can really help you to draft the audit report in very less time. Once you have this Excel ready, you can directly put the observations from here into the report. In fact, you can send this Excel to the client as well. So client will also come to know what exactly you have done during the course of audit. And these are the data or the documents confirming the observations. Since my topic covers the P2P, we will just quickly run through this slide. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. This does not cover the vendor master thing, because for this particular exercise I did it earlier, so it is not in my scope, but of course that can also be a part of scope. Any question till here? I'll just review that Excel. If there will, I'll have to anonymize the data. Once I'll do that, I'll definitely share. So in fact, I've requested branch not to share those documents, because those are the live documents which I'm presenting just for the understanding of the audience. But yeah, definitely I will share. You can ping me on my mobile or email. I'll definitely share that. Yeah, report of course we will discuss. Yes. Now comes the specifics of the procure to pay cycle. So typically a procure to pay cycle begins with the purchase requisition. I have knowingly not highlighted all the things which could go wrong here because I want to have your inputs as well during your course of audit. Have you come across anything which are not covered over here? Please feel free to share what you have observed when you are doing an audit. Let's say you are beginning an audit and you have received a PR register from a client. What typically audit procedure you will perform? Anyone? We are doing internal audits, right? Siri, there is nothing right or wrong here. You can freely express your views.
One thing I want to mention that PR processing, the
Yeah.
main role is of a store manager. The
Yeah.
any PR should be routed through the store manager because the stock which is already lying in the warehouse, same
Correct.
should not be ordered.
So that's an indenting process, sir, which you discussed. So when user will require any material, he will first do an indenting, which will go to the stores person, who will first try to identify that particular item in the warehouse. If that particular item is available in the warehouse, then we might not have to proceed further
I
for
have
the
seen many
procurement.
companies are not having that system.
Sorry,
because,
sir, please come again.
Many companies are not having that system that
True,
it goes to
true,
because
true.
the user themselves have rights to
Yes.
raise
Correct.
the PR in the system. And
Correct.
once the PR is raised, the PO is prepared.
Right.
Because purchase team requires just PR only. They do not go and ask to the store person that
Right.
whether the stock is lying or not.
Right.
Thank you.
So are we good till now? I would like to have so many senior members are there. If we are off track, please feel free to give your inputs. I will try my best to.
Specifically with respect to purchase requisition, two important issues which we observe, like first is purchase orders are created without PR reference in the system.
Right.
So that's the one important aspect. And second thing is purchase requisitions are not reviewed on periodical basis in the system. Maybe lot of PRs are open in the system and nobody is carrying out quarterly or monthly review of open PRs.
Correct. So that is basically a hygiene issue, which with regard to the open PRs, but this is a trigger point. When we talk about the procure to pay cycle, PR requisition is a trigger point. So it is very important for an organization to map those PR with the budget first. So whatever PRs are raised, I'll give you a practical example. When I was doing the audit of that automobile company, I saw a item for which PR was raised twice by the different user, and that item was costing 2.5 crore rupees. And it might not have the utilization of that extent. So if by mistake that item would have procured twice, there will be a total blockage of fund to that extent. So it is very important, the person who is creating a PR, the person who is approving the PR, what data points he reviews before approving the PR. So we as an auditor need to see that as well. Ideally, we should get the organogram first, need to map who all have been given access to create PR. Is there any overlap of access? Let's say the person who is having access to create PR is also having access to, let's say, approve PR. So chances of collation are much higher. So first we need to see that there is clear segregation of duty between the maker and checker. The person who is creating PR will never have right to approve the PR. Second thing, we can see the open PR thing which you discuss. So the immediate question as an auditor we should ask is, does this item now not required? If so, why at first place the PR was raised? Very important thing to ask. If that particular item was for which PR was raised, let's say a couple of months back, if it is not procured till date, how does the user manage without that particular item? So was there an error? Was there something not required and for which PR was raised? These are a couple of questions we as an auditor should ask when it comes to the open PR. Rather than just hygiene issue, these are the more critical issues. It may possible sometime that item was critical but not procured because the person who was supposed to approve did not approve it within time. Sir, please give sir the mic.
See, normally we have either two functions. One is a demand generation department. Some industries have it known as demand generation.
Okay.
And the second part which you have is your MRP systems which are interlinked.
Yeah.
Now, MRP in a phase 3 or 4 will auto-generate your PR and PO
Very
also.
true. Very
So only if there is a manual intervention between. To
Correct,
answer the first
correct.
question,
These
where
everything
it
will
can
comes
cover,
into
it
picture
will
when
not
there is a
come
manual.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Because demand generation will have its own number and it will go again with it.
Correct.
So unless you
Correct.
don't have both of them, it is purely manual, then only duplicate happen.
Correct. Very true, sir. So most of the industries refrain from this MRP process which you just discussed, because I have seen at least couple of industries who try to implement the MRP functionalities, but they end up having so much pile of inventory, because sometimes what was happening that a particular item was procured but it was never sold, so that there was so much inventory piled up. So they are very cautious when it comes to implementation of auto generation of PR. So that totally depends upon the management, how it can be linked, sir. If the entity wants, they can definitely configure and make it.
No, if there is breakdown in the machine, then how can this demand can come to know that there is a breakdown?
Yeah,
If there is a
true.
preventive maintenance is going
Correct,
on in the company.
correct.
Shutdown
So, sir,
is
in all
so
these
we
cases,
can't
they generally have a mechanism called critical spares, and they have certain minimum quantities in place when it comes to the breakdown and all that you are discussing. So it is called maintaining a minimum quantity or reorder level quantity for the critical spares items.
all
So-
items are does not cover in that concept.
Yes, true. Everything will not be covered. So they have specific categorizations.
Capex PR will also
Yeah,
not cover.
yeah. Certain companies have separate category. They have marked the item code, inventory code, which relates to the critical spares. So that way they even, when an auditor will review non-moving, slow-moving inventory, they will exclude these things because it will always be lying in the inventory.
For example, service PR. So service PR will also be not.
Right. That will, service PR will never be part of an auto PR. True, sir. True.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone has come across this PR split modus operandi? Can anyone explain how does it work? Please, sir. Right. So they have defined delegation of authority with some monetary thresholds. So to bypass those thresholds, sometimes it happens that a user might generate multiple PRs so that he is not caught up. Right. Okay. Please feel free to ask if anyone has any question with regard to this slide. We will move to the next. We will have the same sequence of discussion. We will first discuss what is the process a particular steps carries, what are the audit or data points that we need to see, sampling method. then documentations, what are the red flags, and what audit procedure we need to perform. For sampling, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask that how we can do a sampling when it comes to the reviewing the PR register. So once we have raised the PR, there will not be a direct PO. So before the commercial team, yes please. No problems. Right. Right. So when it comes to the manual PR, it is important who is the person who is doing it, the digitalization of those PR. So there need to be a mechanism to reconcile the manual PRs vis-a-vis the PR uploaded or entered into the system. So there will be a mechanism where by end of the day, ideally this should be done on a daily basis to ensure that there is no excess PR generated or any important PR which was supposed to be executed, but let's say that person forgot to put into the system. So there will need to be a daily reconciliation mechanism wherein one can verify those manual PRs with the PRs in the system. Hope I have answered your query. Yeah. Okay. So one of the most vulnerable thing when it comes to the procure to pay cycle, selection of a vendor. What could go wrong in this particular process? Come on, I think we all of must have answer to this question. Yeah. Selection of a biased vendor, that could be the biggest risk which can exist. Huh? Yeah, sort of. What else? I will make your life easy. I have given at least few examples here, so you can just use that as well. Anyone else? Sorry? L1 not selected, but it will at least document it. So when you will be doing the audit, when you will be doing a comparative analysis, you will at least be able to identify the transactions wherein the L1 vendor is not selected. And there might be some justifications when it comes to the selection of an L2 vendor. Let's say the L1 vendor does not have capacity or was not able to deliver material on time, sort of things. But how we identify transactions or purchases wherein we have the documents in place. Let's say we have 3 quotations, we have comparative sheet, we have all those things in place. Then it becomes very difficult as an internal auditor to identify those anomalies or those mishappenings. What else? See, I will make sure we leave and we end the session before time. So don't worry about it. I will not stretch beyond the given time. So feel free to give your inputs. Most of the frauds happen in this area only. So we as an internal auditor might not have that lens to view things that way. But we need to see beyond documents, we need to see beyond numbers, we need to track the trends, we need to see a lot of analysis when it comes to the vendor selection. Because this is something, people are smart nowadays, they will definitely manage all those documents in place. So you as an auditor will not be able to catch just by seeing the documents upfront. You will have to go a step beyond. You will have to identify certain patterns, how the new vendors have been enrolled or onboarded, who have given the approval or who has given the approval for those vendors. you need to analyze the vendor master data first. If you really want to catch something of this sort, you need to really analyze the vendor master data. That, let's say there are multiple codes, but when it comes to the, let's say, PAN number or mobile number or email ID, we came to know that 5 vendors have been registered on the same phone number or same email ID. Then we need to deep dive into that, how these particular things would have happened. Yes, please.
Can we do external confirmation, like what happens with छोटे
माइक दो ना सर को.
like small companies, what they arrange in-house pre-quotations.
Yes, that's
How to identify this type of things?
That's what I'm saying, that for that you need to first look at the vendor master data. You need to review the documents properly. What are the similarities? Sometimes what happens when you have 3 quotations from same party or same person, he might have used the same format. He might have used same font, same font type, same font size. That's why I'm saying you need to see the things with a different lens. You need to see all these things with the mindset of a fraud auditor, for
But sir,
example.
people are getting more and more smarter than
Yeah,
previous
definitely.
days.
That's what I'm
So
saying,
th-
that
so
it is not
what-
that
what
easy
they-
to catch. Yeah.
What they used to do, they used different AI platforms to generate
Yeah, that's
quotation.
also
Then
happening.
how to verify?
That is
do
also
we
happening.
do we apply external confirmation? Like, can we call to that different person?
You can
and
do
ask?
that way. If that amount is really that material, you can always choose that way. But then you need to see your scope as well. What your scope, whether your scope permits you to do that.
Okay.
Will the management like if you will do that? That is
Okay.
something first we need to. Yes, please.
One red flag that I have found during my course of audit is that during review we observed that the criteria for which the quote being invited are not same for the all 3 vendors. So what
Correct.
happened to give someone preferred preference, the criteria given to him and to other competitors were not of the same nature.
Right.
So we come to know this observation when we have observed the process of making
Scoring
inquiry and getting a quotation from the vendors. So by reviewing this process, we got to know that on a same email address they are sending a quotation
Yeah.
for the 3.
Correct,
So that
correct.
could be
So
one
these are the
process
things.
by deep diving which we can identify whether the 3 independent from the different
Right.
3 independent
Right.
sources we are getting the quote or not.
Perfect. So this is something you cannot look at in isolation. You need to compare a lot of documents, you need to compare a lot of examples, that why always this X vendor is always selected, why not Y. So then you will get some hint or some feel that okay, there is something wrong in this particular thing and we need to further deep dive. Then once we have that clarity, then as sir said, we can of course approach to the vendor and get things verified. Any question?
I just want to understand your approach. When we start audit of any new company which is being assigned to us, we have some predefined risk checklist in our mind.
Right.
So as and when we are attending like seminars, we come to know different perspective, different sort of risk.
Correct.
So I just want to understand your approach to have a broader risk universe which you address during your audit.
Yeah, so first what always we can do is we need to identify the products. You can always go for the product, you can go for the materiality, that which particular item is of essence to an organizations, and what is the extent of involvement of the supply team, what is the extent of involvement of the user. In so many companies, the user themselves approach to the vendor and get the material in. So these are the more risk prone things when the procurement or commercial team is not involved and user directly approach to the vendor. They even give excuses that the supplier team does not have that technical knowledge to assess if that particular item, how he can source from the vendors. So he always have to take help of the user, right? But taking help is not a problem, but when he independently deals with the vendor is a problem. So you need to sort of go through the email communication, you need to go through all these documents to derive at some conclusion that okay, this is the area where I need to further deep dive.
Can you suggest any, apart from ChatGPT and open source, any resource from which you can enrich your risk with respect to any such processes?
So there are a couple of tools available in the market which can help you to read the emails. So let's say you have identified a particular employee or particular person where you feel that he might have done something beyond his capacity. So you can take the email file of that particular user from the IT team, you can upload it on that tool, you can give him the key search item, then he will throw you the results. Another things which is out of box, you can get the bank statement of that user, of his family member, if you are very sure that he has done something wrong, and then you can see if he has received any amount from any of the vendors from the organization. So these are certain things which you can do, but I don't think so generally in an internal audit we go to that level of depth. These all things comes into picture when you have some sort of fraud happened and you have some forensic audit in place. So these are part of the forensic audit per se. Okay, anyone else? Yes, please.
As you answered this question, I had a thought that you mentioned about this email. You can extract this email and you can verify that, and you can get some pattern or anything which is extraordinary, or we can get the idea about that. But these days, agents like full ERP, we have a full data and full our ERP. For example, Microsoft 365. Okay, so it's connected with SharePoints and it's connected with all the data in our email or all the data wherever it is, it's connected now. So how do we identify a fraud from that which data is all connected of all the organization?
Can you quickly repeat what you have asked? I missed something in between.
Okay. अभी कैसा है कि माइक्रोसॉफ्ट शेयरपॉइंट, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट वन, जो डेटा जहाँ पे रहता है पूरा वो सब कनेक्टेड है.
करेक्ट.
ओके, तो अगर मैं कोपायलट को ऐसा कोई क्वेश्चन आस्क कर सकता हूँ क्या जिससे वो पूरा कनेक्ट करके मुझे एक फ्रॉड पकड़ के दे, क्योंकि ऑलरेडी कनेक्टेड है. शेयर पॉइंट में मेरा डेटा पड़ा हुआ है, फिर माइक्रोसॉफ्ट मेल्स में मेरा पूरा डेटा पड़ा हुआ है, जितना भी डेटा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का है वो पूरा कनेक्टेड है. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल नाउ डेज व्हाट्स हैपनिंग इज I can ask anything. Wherever my data is there, I can ask and it will give a reply from that data. I don't know where the data, because data is too much. And now I don't remember when the email came. So I just go and ask, I don't remember this email, but it's related to this. Can you just extract that email for me? That it will give you. Same way, it will give you from anywhere data is there.
Even for sent emails.
हाँ, पूरा not just in email, even in Microsoft One, even in Microsoft SharePoint, or anywhere where our organization data is there. It can give you, a Copilot will give you answer from that. So how do we identify a fraud from that kind of Copilot?
So that is something I have heard first time. So I have not practically.
Because you mentioned about email, so I just got an idea. So
yeah,
maybe
so email is something which I have done when there was an extensive audit apart from the internal audit. So the client, that was the requirement of client, that I have some doubt on this particular employee's integrity. So I just want to ensure that has he done something wrong. So if you can just give us the idea by reviewing the emails. So that is something I have done, but there's something new for me.
it's okay. Thank you.
Okay. So once we have finalized the vendor, when we have done all these 3 quotations and all, we have finalized and got the comparative sheet, then we will release the purchase order to that particular L1 vendor, right? So there are a couple of ways to communicate the PO to the vendor. One is you integrate it with your ERP itself, and then from that ERP, that particular vendor will get an email automatically. The other way is to send a manual PO through email to that vendor. So the chances of error or chances of getting wrong PO or incorrect details through email are much higher as compared to when it go through the ERP itself. So as an auditor, there are certain things which we need to look at here. I have personally seen an example. The client was into a project execution. So they have a capex of around 40-50 CR. So back in 22-23, I think they have raised one PO amounting to rupees 7 lakh. And as we stand in 25, it's a very recent example. To my surprise, I saw that PO has been amended so many times that the amount has increased from 7 lakh to 70 lakhs. So there is a trail out there in the system, but nobody was looking at that why a particular PO at first place was raised to 7 lakh, if at all there was a requirement which could have lead to 70 lakh rupees. So even the management was very surprised to know that how this would have happened, because the project manager, the project head would have changed at least 3 or 4 times. So every time the new project head would come and the requirement will come, he will just amend the PO. So this is one thing we can always look into, that how many times a particular PO has been amended. We can get a log from the client, say to get the access to the PO amendments. So this is the one area again people do nowadays to bypass those monetary limits. At least in SAP there is a functionality of overriding, but whenever there will be amendment, it will always go through the same approval hierarchy or the release strategy. So in SAP, it's not that easy to do any sort of play with the purchase order, at least. What else we can or could go wrong when it comes to the purchase order? Yeah, that's an important thing. Yeah, correct. I have seen companies suffer lakhs of rupees on account of not defining a clear-cut terms and conditions, especially in service POs. Okay, what else? Sorry, sir? Right. Correct, correct. Correct. Of course,
Saying
of course.
That 90 rupees or 100 rupees doesn't make any difference. What is the total cost of ownership? That ultimately determines in a heavy engineering, construction, other places, that is what is the point of reference which is.
Right. Right. So when it comes to PO, 2-3 important things that we should look at is the open PO. Just like an open PR, there is a concept called open PO. Certain organizations have set a cutoff to an open PO. Let's say if there is a capex PO, it will be auto closed after 6 months. And if there is a revenue PO, it will be auto closed after 3 months. But then, of course, we as an auditor have to ensure that those 3 months or 6 months are not from the PO creation date, it is from the delivery date. Because you might have created a PO, there is a lead time of let's say 2 months, 3 months, and you might receive it on the 4th month. And if your system will auto close those PO, you might not be able to invert those material if the PO will get close. But when it comes to the open PO thing, I have seen a client who has an open PO from 2022-23, even in 25. That item was not required at all, but there is always a chance that फिर तो करना कुछ भी नहीं है ना, एक इनवॉइस को ही उसके सामने रिकॉर्ड करना है, especially when you have that GRN things not in place for the service PO. So there is a big risk of invoice getting recorded against those open POs. So when we do an audit of at least service, we need to identify the service POs, and we need to ensure that those POs which are not executed within certain times are getting closed, right, within a reasonable time frame. It can always be in consultation with management, according to them what is the appropriate timeline for a particular category of purchase order. Okay, anything else? What else could go wrong in purchase order?
For example, there is order of bearing, okay. So there are multiple options available for China, make, ZKL,
Right.
Tata, Escape.
Correct.
If make is not mentioned, then there can be
Sir, what I understand is that the description in a PO would fetched from PR. So these things need to be kept in mind while approving the PR or raising the PR. So
Because,
PO is a reflection of PR. Once PR will be approved, at least when there are PR in the system. So once PR is raised, the quantity, descriptions, everything will be auto-fetched from the PR to the PO.
No, many companies are not having that system, that what is mentioned in the
Okay.
PR sales
Okay.
should be
So in that
automatically
case,
reflected in
this
the
is
PO.
something we can always suggest a client to automate this process. So once and for all, this problem can only one time while raising the PR, one will have to be careful that a particular or right make or right description is selected.
And when the person is
Please.
making inward of the GR preparing, at that time also he should be aware of the which make has been ordered.
Correct.
So while
Correct.
getting the
Very
goods, he
true.
should be aware.
Yes, sir.
Otherwise-
Sir को mic चाहिए.
बाकी
Right. That's again, yes, a good suggestion. Yeah, you can you can have an inventory separate code for
In
that.
reality, the part master and who actually does the vendor master and the part master is actually even falling under your segregation of duty also.
Yeah, true.
So when you have your part number correctly, like the gentleman said that which type of part. So when you select that part, he has to select a part number, or he has to first request for a creation of a new part number. So that is where the whole PR process then starts off with that in a typical ERP system.
Correct.
There could be offline systems, I don't deny that.
Yeah.
There are emergency systems also where dummy part numbers are used.
Yeah.
But the typical way of fraud which you are talking about could be change the part number, no comparable available.
Correct. True. Yes, sir.
System manual,
Hmm.
and then it is shared to vendor over. It is shared to vendor over email, or in some cases vendor are also instructing that they don't want on email, just share it on over WhatsApp. So in that case, what is your approach to ensure that only authorized POs are properly shared to vendors?
So I believe we should have control at the time of inward of material. So anything goes out of system should not be allowed while doing a GRN of that particular item. So that way this problem can always get resolved. Okay. Suspicious vendor. हाँ हाँ, बट वो तो आएगा ही नहीं ना सर. पीओ तो हम भेजते हैं ना, आता थोड़ी है. हाँ. No, I didn't get you exactly. So PO is something which, yeah.
There are cases in my client case where it has happened from the suspicious side, and then client comes to know about. Especially the payment has gone to the wrong things and all that.
But that would not have on account of at least receiving PO from the vendor. I still didn't. If you can elaborate a little bit, it will really help.
I mean, the suspicious, I mean, the vendor was a fraud one, and he has.
See, unless and until there is someone from organization who is entertaining
Yes.
The suspicious
Yeah,
vendor,
yeah,
I
so-
don't think so anything will
Yeah.
happen to the organization at least.
Yeah, so ultimately the concerned purchase guy was sacked and all
Yeah.
that, but this happened.
Yeah.
So this can happen. This could be one of the
Even only purchase guy will not result into such kind of payments. There will be again an accounts or finance person. There will be some collation between these 2-3. Then only such type of things are possible.
Just last thing, vendor introduction process is what is not mentioned here.
No, I have covered.
So
I have
somewhere
covered.
where you have
Yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah.
what he's asking would be also getting covered over here, that who is introducing the vendor?
I'll come to that.
Who owns the vendor?
Yeah, I'll come to that. Thank you for reminding. Okay. That I discussed, na, that two. Yeah, that is the blanket PO which you are discussing. Yeah. Of course. This should always be a part of the audit procedure, the tolerance limit which you just mentioned. So generally tolerance limits are kept for the materials which are received in batches or practically not possible to receive in the same quantity. Let's say steel is one of the example, or let's say you are receiving some packing material when the vendor is processing a particular item in some batches. So let's say you have place an order for 1000 quantity, but the process is such that the vendor cannot send you a 1000 quantity. He will run a bench and there will be let's say 1050 quantity. So generally for the ease of doing this thing, the organization generally put the tolerance limit in the purchase order, but then you need to see tolerance limit are generally set against the item master. So you need to see against what item the entity has set the tolerance. So that is something you should always review. This is very critical thing, because I have seen because the amount is very petty, so one does not come to know in real time. So yeah, of course, tolerance limit is something should always be part of the review process when it comes to the purchase order. Okay, so once we have sent the purchase order to the supplier, supplier will then send us the material, right? At GRN stage, what are the things we as an auditor should keep in mind, apart from what is written here? Anyone? Yeah, that is one thing. Yeah, we can always do that TAT analysis. So ideally an organization should have some SOPs or some processes in place when they have given certain timelines for the GRN, right from the receipt of material to the actual GRN in the system. That is the one thing. Okay, what else?
GRN quantity.
Sorry, sir.
GRN quantity acceptable.
GRN quantity? No, I could not hear you clearly. Yeah, right.
So basically it's a case like in purchase order quantity is mentioned as say 1000 kilo, but GRN is maybe allowing up to certain bench threshold.
Right. Yeah, so generally organization refrain from accepting more quantities than what are given in the PO. So sometimes it happens that the vendor would have sent an excess quantity, and even he would have invoiced those excess quantity. So your PO will not allow. So either you will have to amend your PO or ask the vendor to get the excess quantity back and send the revised invoice and revise and take the excess inventory back. lower quantity में तो problem ही नहीं है. So this is something then you need to put controls with regard to the actual receipt of material. So might as well your stores guy would record the quantities with, let's say you have ordered 100 quantities but you have actually received 95 quantities, but the stores guy will book GRN with the 100 quantity. So that is something called mechanism of inventory count, or when the material is actually getting inwarded, the user should also be there in place to ensure that only those quantities are being inwarded which are actually received. So certain organization again lack this process.
So, sir, one example, just I would like to share practical experience. Say in one industry, material was receiving regularly against whatever purchase order quantity there was, and maybe receiving, for example, against 1000 kilo we were receiving 900 kilo or 950,
Right.
like that. So in that case, a structured way is we developed a dedicated report whereby certain percentage deviation we will issue automatically.
Correct.
System will issue debit note to
Correct.
the vendor because it is a regular receipt of material.
Right.
So this is just an example.
Yeah, that could be one solution. Even certain organization have that tolerance in place, especially when there is an import case. So organization generally don't want to go into that regulatory issues and all, because that bill of entry will not be closed if you will book invoice with the short quantity. So you will have some repercussion at customs. So generally what they do is they will book invoice with full quantity and will have financial settlement with the vendor in most of the cases. Even I have seen, in fact I have suggested a client when it comes to, in let's say in kg or ton, a particular material is coming. So while doing an audit, so this is something we do manually, right, because system does not capture the payment slip ka data. So we have, while doing this sampling, we got to know that out of 10 or 15 samples we have selected, at least in 4 to 5 cases, there was a variance in the receipt of material. Client has defined a tolerance limit of 0.5%. Let's say if 1000 kg material is received, they will allow GRN up to 950. But we have seen a cases wherein the materials are received even below those tolerance limit and no approvals are being captured. Then we suggested that the purchase register or the GRN register should have one more column. Those data are anyways captured. Payment slip to hota hi hai. Someone just have to punch those data there and you can have a ready-made report. So when you will get the GRN register, you will have the invoice quantity, GRN quantity vis-a-vis payment slip quantity. So that way you can always compare what has been booked in GRN and what is the payment slip quantity, and then you can further deep dive into the specific cases. Okay, what else? See, if there is a collusion between the stores person and the user, there are chances that supplier would have sent a quantity or a material with lesser quantity, but the GRN will get booked with the full quantity. Especially this happens in project cases. Raw material में ऐसा possible नहीं होता because उसका consumption and everything is getting tracked somewhere. But in project, there is no concept called consumption ka analysis and all. So there might be a requirement of material of 50 quantity because the user only has given that requirement. Back of the mind he knows that I'll need only 40 quantities. So we'll knowingly ask the commercial team to get the 10 excess quantity, and then we'll have connect with the vendor, and then we'll get the invoice for the 50 quantity and we'll receive only 40 quantities. So the 10 quantities that I'm talking about might have values in lakhs or maybe in crores. So that is something we need to ensure that when the materials is actually getting inwarded, there is a concept called gate entry. So gate entry is generally done by the security guy. So once the security guy do the inwarding, if users here are aware about the SAP, so it's through 103 or 101 movement, the material is getting inwarded, and through 105 then GRN is being prepared. So then we need to compare the gate entry data with the GRN data. So we'll come to know that, okay, at GRN the material received quantity was 40 only, but the actual GRN is booked with the 50 quantity. So you can get some idea, okay, that we might have received a lesser quantity, but the stores guy would have booked the quantity with the invoice quantity. Okay, anything else? Yeah. So here comes again a very important part with regard to procure to pay, the booking of an invoices. So the most vulnerable risk here would be the booking of duplicate invoices or booking in invoices without actual receipt of material. So how do we as an auditor will ensure that these two things are not taking place in any organization? Yes, please. People are very smart, sir. They'll just put dot or something and then the invoice will be getting booked.
That's the one control.
Yeah, that's the good control. This is the bare minimum thing a system should have. What else?
In SAP, there is Miro concept. So without
Yes.
Migo, Miro is not possible.
Correct.
So GRN is must. So that is the best control.
Yeah. But what about the service POs?
In that also
So in
service GRN
any
is there.
organization-
Service GRN is service GRN option is also there.
Yeah, but a lot of organization doesn't activate that functionality of doing a service sheet, basically it's called. Just for goods, just like GRN, there is a service entry sheet for the service POs. But so many organizations kept that function deactivated. So there will be an invoice and then there will be a payment.
So from your angle, what will be the control in that?
Sorry,
in cases
sir?
of services.
Sorry?
In case of services, how to monitor?
Yeah, that's what I'm asked. We will come to that, yeah, but I want your inputs. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, so the best way would be we activate this service entry sheet function. It will just act like the GRN as in case of goods. So we can get the confirmation from the user for actual availment of the services. So once user will confirm that yeah, they have actually availed the services with regard to that PO, then the particular invoice can be booked, not otherwise. That is the one check that can be in place. How do we identify duplicate invoices otherwise? I just want to know what audit procedure we will be performing to identify. Duplicate booking of invoice. So the Miro example that you gave will not work when the PO will have an excess quantity. Let's say the PO was raised for the 1000 quantity. You have received invoice for, let's say, 250 quantity or 100 quantity. So if that PO amount will not get exhausted, until that PO amount is getting exhausted, system will allow to record invoice against those GRN. Sorry, sir? हाँ, बिना GRN के नहीं होगा, but when there is a PO in place, PO में open quantity है, then we'll receive invoice, तो वो हो जाएगा. हाँ, exactly. Correct. So we are discussing those probabilities only. Yeah, the maker checker thing. Yeah. So I've seen organization having multiple options of recording of invoices. One is called the direct booking of expense. So when there are certain sort of transactions, for the ease of reference and for the making payment to the vendors on time, there are certain class of expenses which are not routed to the purchase orders. Manpower is one of the typical example. When, sorry? Yeah, electricity bill, yes. So these are the examples. So I have seen cases wherein an invoice is recorded in both the systems. So the particular invoice is recorded against PO as well, and a PO invoice is recorded through direct booking of service as well. So how do we identify these cases? How do we identify these cases? Rather than doing, what I personally do is I do scrutiny of vendor ka ledger. So I get the dump of all the vendor data. There is a category of voucher type called, let's say, RE. Those are the against PO recording, KR. Those are against the direct bookings. So we can get all this data, and we can try to map it with the PO. So that way we can identify if there are any invoices. We can do, of course, that duplicate check for the invoice number, invoice date, and invoice amount. So that again, this also does not work always. When the invoice is recorded, let's say 0.5 rupees आगे पीछे कर दिया. So again, that will not help. So we have to be extra cautious when it comes to identification of duplicate recording of invoices. Any question? Payment processing. So the most important thing to do in the payment processing is to do a three-way match analysis. We as an auditor need to ensure that a payment, when the payment is made to a supplier, after that we do a three-way match analysis. What is three-way match analysis? PO, GR and an invoice, right. So that ideally should have happened at this stage only. This is one more way to find those invoices which are not or maybe booked out of the system. Okay. What are the key risks associated with the payment process? Again, duplicate payment, excess payment. I am giving you an example. Let's say a PO was raised for 10 lakh rupees, right? The vendor has a term that I'll need 70% advance payment. Organization has made a 70% advance payment against that invoice. Whatever material, service the organization was supposed to receive has received, right? And the invoices was recorded. And then again payment of 10 lakh rupees was made against that PO. So there was an excess payment of 7 lakh rupees. So how do we identify such cases? Through vendor ledger, okay. What else? See, ये तब possible होगा सर ये vendor ledger वाला when there is a one-off transaction with the vendor. But then there are routine transaction with vendor, you might not be able to identify it with that ease. Yes. That's okay, but is it map against that PO? Any possibility of making advance payment without PO? I have seen cases wherein the organization has multiple bank accounts. Same day payment is released from two different accounts to vendor. Getting my point? Let's say an organization is having bank account in Standard Chartered Bank and with SBI also. So payment was made to a particular vendor on the very same day through Standard Chartered Bank also and through SBI also. How that would have happened? This could be one of the reasons, right? See, after the MSME Act becoming stringent, so many organizations have made their payment flow automated. So, जितने भी MSME vendor होंगे ना, they will receive payment within that 45 days का timeline. So, if a particular transaction is flown to that automated flow, a particular vendor is an MSME vendor, let's say for example. So, they have set a time limit of 3 days. So, on the 42nd day, system will automatically send all those invoices for the payment, and they have host to host system. What is host to host system? Has anyone seen? Huh? No, so this H2H is something, the auto processing of payment through bank. So you don't have to prepare all these payment advice and all. Once you have, so the bank has linked their server with the SAP. So the organization, when the organization will try to make the payment, they will not have to upload separate files or go to the bank and write the checks and do RTGS and all. They will only have to upload one file. Let's say I need to make payment to these 50 vendors today. I'll have to just give a one click, post the entry in the system, and the automatic payment will happen to the supplier. They will even receive the payment advice from bank, and client will also get the confirmation of making payment to the vendor. So in all these cases, it is very important that someone oversee, because when we nowadays lot of discuss about the automations and everything, but automation again comes with certain challenges. So as an auditor, we always have to ensure that in this dynamic world, we always equip ourselves with all these processes, that how and what controls needs to be built to ensure that these kinds of things doesn't get repeated or doesn't occur at all. Okay, what else? How much time do I have? I have already crossed 5. Yeah, so you'll have to quickly wrap up, I believe, right? So, okay, let's quickly proceed. Yeah, so the vendor master that sir was discussing. So it is again, ideally we should have discussed this earlier, but I wanted to keep it at last because this is again an important thing when it comes to the procure to pay cycle. So this is again sort of a trigger point that an organization should always ensure that any vendor is created is always through a maker checker concept. There are enough checks and balances to ensure that no unauthorized vendor is created in the system. So I have seen cases wherein the organization has blocked a certain vendor in the vendor master data, but they have not timely removed their details from the bank's portal. So ideally, when there is a manual RTGS payment or IMPS payment through a bank portal, let's say SBI, so you need to register the beneficiary, right? That we all know. So they have blocked that particular vendor from the system, but they did not in the real time remove those vendors from the bank's portal. So what happened, that we identified at least hundreds of cases. The number was 170 around. So those 170 vendors were blocked in the SAP, but those 170 vendors were having the beneficiary active on the bank portal. So there is a risk. If someone would get access to the bank portal, they will easily able to make payment to those vendors. So this is again should be a checkpoint when we review the banking details. I've also seen couple of cases when the bank details in the SAP was X, but on the bank portal it was Y. So why it would have happened? Because the person who has updated the bank details on the bank portal did not update it in the vendor master data. So bank details is one of the critical thing in any vendor master data, apart from the duplication checks and all other things. This we can skip. These we have covered. We can just quickly go through it and let me know if anyone wants any further detail with regard to this. Shall I proceed? These again we have discussed. So these are the key takeaways. I would just like to summarize this session, that before we go into any audit or we finalize any scope with the auditor, for those who are coming from the industry, first we need to make sure that the auditor understand the business in absolute sense before finalizing the scope. Once the scope is finalized, an auditor needs to identify what are the high risk or key risk items, and then accordingly need to integrate his approach with those risks. Need to do a documentation. We of course discuss a lot of technologies. This will really help to do audit in much efficient way. Thank you. I will really appreciate your feedback. You can reach out to me on this number or on this email ID. I will be more than happy to have your feedback. And please be, yes, okay. Thank you everyone. Yeah.
It's my immense pleasure and great honor to propose a vote of thanks to Mustakin sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for showering us a great ocean of knowledge on us. Thank you. Here we conclude the session. Thank you.